Welcome to Conspiracy Theories of the Carolinas. I'm Ron Ramsey, along with Lee Burnette. Lee, it's great to be on the show this week. We've got an exciting show to talk about. Tell us a little bit of some of the things that's going to be on this show.
Well, thanks a lot, Ron. Today we're going to talk about a local legend, in North Carolina, about 10 miles south of Siler City, North Carolina. Is a little area in the woods called the Devils Tramping Ground. Something I've heard of as a kid growing up my entire life. The same story. Today we're going to look at that story, some reasons for the things that may happen in there, and we're going to take care of a little business as far as what's coming up for next week also.
Fantastic. Well, the Devils Tramping Ground is sort of a mystery to everyone.
Yes.
And, of course, it's one of the North Carolina's famous devil attractions, I guess you should say. It's sort of just quaint, like you said. It's on State Road 1100
Yep.
in rural Chatham County, just right outside of Siler City. And it's you can park on the road. The road is, of course, has a street sign. They say that people tend to steal that sign because it's popular. You can park and walk down to the circle, and it's about a 40-foot circle that nothing grows in it. It's a lot of mystery. There's been a lot of people that have gone looking for the devil, looking for signs. People have gotten spooked. There's lots and lots of stories we're going to talk about.
Right.
And you've had a personal experience
Right.
actually visiting there in the middle of the night.
I did. That was a really interesting time of around 2015. I was in a local theater production with some people, and we were texting back and forth. What are we going to do tonight? What are we going to do? And they said, well, let's go to the Devil's Tramping Ground. I had never been. So I said, sure, let's go. So, we start making plans to go. And then suddenly everybody backs out. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'll go by myself, just to kind of prove a point to everybody. And so I get in the car and I drive. It's about 2 hours from here, 2.5. And I get there maybe 10 o'clock at night. It's pitch black outside. And what they say about the area itself, there's no birds, there's no wildlife. You don't hear anything. There's no crickets, no sounds whatsoever. It's kind of
so you've actually experienced that.
Oh yeah. It's very odd. I say sound, but there's lack of sound. Very, very odd. No wind whipping through there. So I drive to the little area that you can pull off, and it's actually marked by some little signs in the road. So you pull off. I was there by myself that night, as I said, and so I take my sleeping bag, my iPhone. The only I was ill prepared, but my iPhone had a little flashlight on it, so I took that, and so I walked about 30 feet into the woods, and there it was. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to spend the night.
Now, you were there by yourself.
By myself. And so I laid the sleeping bag out, and I laid down. And now this is where it starts to get a little, I'm not going to say I was scared. Either the Roger back there running the controls says I was scared. But what happened was you lay down, and like I said, there's no sounds at all. And so when something does happen, it magnifies in your head 100 times. And you're like, what is that? So I heard a twig snap. And I'm like, what's that? And then you start worrying about what's out in the woods. I'm not worried about the devil running around. I'm worried about what's going on in the woods, or some kind of odd creatures, because I've always read about and always heard about the fact if you fall asleep in the middle of the tramping ground, then you'll wake up outside the tramping ground. If you leave something in there overnight, the next morning it will be out of the tramping ground.
That's what the legend says.
That's the legend. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to lay here and try to fall asleep. Every little snap of a twig, and then I started to hear, is that footsteps I'm hearing? No, it can't be footsteps. Well, who's walking around? Then I'm thinking, well, I don't know who's walking around out here. I don't know this area. Needless to say, 45 minutes later, I was driving home. And I was,
calling had enough already.
I had enough. I was calling my friends and telling them that I was headed back. But it is a very strange place. It's got an eerie feel to it. I can totally understand why somebody would, as they say, kind of lose their mind by staying there all night, because you are pinpointed on every sound that emanates from those woods.
Well, when I was doing research for this, I found some interesting things. There's a lot of stories that people tell. It's hard to find a lot of concrete evidence, but there's a lot of rumors, a lot of legends
Right.
going all the way back to the 1600s. A lot in the last 100 years is well known. Now, North Carolina is famous for the devil. You could say a little bit. There's a lot of devil things. Some attribute that to religion from a lot of our ancestors and immigrants that came over. It's particularly in the Scottish-Irish mode. The devil played a central part in their religion. And, we have names all over North Carolina. We have the Devils Tramping Ground that we're talking about today. North Carolina has a Devil Rock.
Sure.
There's a Devil Courthouse. There's 7 devils. There's Kill Devil Hills. There's Devil Branch. There's Devil Chimley. There's Devil's Nest. There's Devil Elbows, 2 Devil Forks,
Right.
and Devil's Knob, and even the Devil's Tater Patch.
That's a scary place. I'm not going to the Tater Patch. I can promise you.
Well, a lot of people, when I was researching the tramping grounds, there was a number of people, not just one, that had gone there. One guy's interview says, "Listen, I went there 37 years ago with some friends. Our intent was to camp out and have a good time.
Sure.
Let me tell you what we saw, what we heard. We left in the middle of the night, and it's one of the most horrifying experiences I ever had, and I would never go back."
Right.
And he was sincere. You could tell when he was telling this tale. He lived around there, so he grew up there, hearing about the Devil's Tramping Ground. Had never gone there, and when he did go there, it was a frightening experience.
Sure.
I know that it's not unusual for people going there to find items that people have left. They left coolers, they left their bags, they left all kind of things.
It has
there.
truly become a trash heap, and I hate to say that. The owners of the property, Bob Dowd's family, they've owned it for over 100 years. And there's actually a site that you can go and actually reserve your spot to go and camp out there. I wish the people that would go out there would take better care of it. After all, it is kind of a national treasure. I'll refer to it that way. But yeah, there's broken glass everywhere. There's, as you said, trash, cans, bottles.
Well, some of the people that I saw in there being interviewed indicated the reason they left stuff was they got frightened. And when they left, they didn't care about that cooler. They didn't care about that bag anymore.
Right.
And so that was their way of just discarding that and taking off from there.
Sure.
Part of the mystique or that is that, and maybe we should cover this a little bit more, but as long as it's been around, the mysterious thing is that the devil rises up out of the ground or transitions or forms there, and he walks around in a circle, plotting his evil or plotting his mischief with humankind and the humans.
Right. That's the Lord, that he rises up. There's a path that leads up to the actual 40-foot circle. And actually, the circle itself is now about 20 feet. It is actually closed in a little bit.
Wiregrass we talked about.
And there's a little bit of wiregrass that grows. Now, I'll get back to the devil lore in a second, but the wiregrass itself is very strange. People have actually tried to take that and transplant it. They've gone in with pots and actually done the correct ways of transporting plants, and they'll take it home and it'll die immediately. None of this grass is growing anywhere else, only inside of this circle. Now, they say that the lore is that the devil will rise up on the path, to walk the path, and then go around in the circle, and with his hooves have this devil's tramping ground. He's trampled all over that circle as he plots his mischief. But that's the lore.
Well, have you, in some of your research you did, I was trying to find stories where people had actually spent the night. It appears that very few people have spent a whole night there.
There have been a few. The thing about this, we covered Bigfoot last week, and Bigfoot, you have stories that are locked to specific people, and those people, you can find information on those people. For this, it's very difficult to find, quote unquote, Joe Smith went to Devils Tramping Ground and stayed the night. You know, there are stories of a Boy Scout troop that tried to spend the night there and woke up a couple of miles away. You know, there are those stories, but they're hard to narrow in on that one specific person who experienced it or first told about it.
Well, one of the stories I saw with the individuals that went there did not want to talk about it.
Sure.
Just did not want to discuss it. Right. That's how frightened they were of that identity, I guess.
Yeah, they're frightened of that, but they're also worried about what are people going to think. You know, I told my story about leaving after 45 minutes. You know, that time period, by the way, has it's. I think it originally started out as 15 minutes, 30 minutes, but I'm not sure.
A little bit longer.
I've stressed it.
It seemed like 45 minutes
did,
anyway.
Yes. But I will say that it's very easy to look back and think, you know what, I should have stayed longer. But at the time, your mind is really playing tricks on you because there are trail cams out there, so you never know. Is it a beast that's out there to come again, or is Tommy Smith from down the road going to come and get me? I don't know who lives around there.
No,
but
the interesting thing I thought was a lot of people speculate that it maybe is the soil. Maybe the soil has too much salt. There's a lot of copper in that area, and so the interesting thing in some of the research, they've actually tested that soil in that circle a number of times. Most of the times it came back, there's no physical reason why a plant wouldn't grow in this.
Sure.
You do have a little bit more ash from all the fires, but still it's not enough that would keep plants from growing. And only one report I saw came back from the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, said it was a little bit high in salt,
sure,
but they didn't think it was high enough to prevent plants from growing.
Right, a salt lick, a natural salt lick that they do show up periodically in different places. But the odd thing about this, it's in that one area, perfect circle. And so why is this salt concentration just in this one perfect circle, that's an anomaly in itself.
And they thought it could be copper, and it's been tested.
Sure.
And they couldn't find any traces of copper that would have been big enough or enough to go ahead and basically cause that issue to happen. So that's the mystery of the tramping grounds, is that nothing grows there. Also, that if you leave items there, you tend to come back. People reported that they would be thrown out of the circle, or they'd be just gone.
Right.
And I think that's where I ran into some of the items that were left there, the little trashy part that you said.
Sure.
And, people don't normally live. On one of the videos I saw, there was actually good things. I mean, a real nice cooler and things that people, they were perfectly normal.
Right.
And people don't really normally go off and leave good stuff.
Right.
They leave their trash.
I'm not leaving a Yeti.
Stuff.
Yeah, I'm not taking my Yeti. Yeah, I'm not going to do it.
But if you're scared bad enough, that Yeti it's not important at all.
No, you're right.
So I guess that would have a little bit to do that. But anyway, I'd like to, and you were also, we did try to talk to the owners of the land. Now, to be honest with you, everything we can find out is the owners are not crazy about promoting this to people. It could obviously be a moneymaker for them. People would pay to camp there. People would pay to come and visit there, but they're really not pushing that by any means. So they're not trying to create all this lore about the trampling ground, and yet it draws a steady stream of visitors. And all the things I saw on the internet was getting hits. People were looking at it.
Sure.
And I'd be interested in visiting myself.
It's interesting to go down there, and as I said earlier, they have a website where you can go and actually register and tell them that you're going to be there a certain night or visit a certain time period.
Is there any charge that you saw associated?
They say there is a $10 fee for that. But the problem is that I called that probably 10 times in the past 3 or 4 days, and nobody answers. I sent a few texts. Nobody answers the text. I believe that website is out of date. And it may have something to do with one of the family members not taking part in it anymore. You never know what's going on with the family. I have heard stories where the family is incredibly nice and incredibly willing to allow you to go on there as long as you'll take care of it. Now, again, it's not being taken care of. So that's the saddest part that I see. Now, the family also runs several other farms in that area and on that road. They have several pastures, a cattle farm, and I've called both of the actual farms, and to no avail.
Well, in looking at animals, we talked about a little bit before the show. If you take a dog there with you or one of your pets with you, usually you get an experience in which they cower. They stick their tail underneath their legs and they whimper. And they do not want to go in that circle.
Right.
Animals sometimes have a sense about them. They're more on instinct than we sometimes are analytical, and we think about it and then we'll do something. But the dog, it appears to be a lot of animals are just genuinely frightened. Now, I never found any kind of animal mutations or death of animals or things there. But
I found one.
I
found one. There's a case where someone went, and there's a video actually on YouTube where he actually filmed his adventure out there. First thing he sees is an animal skeleton. That's just a complete animal skeleton.
Okay.
Now, where did that come from? With all the people going out to visit that place, with all the different things people are doing out there, who knows? Someone could have, killed it and left it just so the next person would say, you know what, I found an animal skeleton.
An animal there.
You never know what people are planting for other people. I really think that nowadays the tramping ground, it can be a lot more fictitious because of what's being planted out there and the stories versus what people truly experienced many years ago.
All right, we need to take a break. You're listening to the Conspiracy Theories of the Carolinas. I'm Ron Ramsey along with Lee Burnette. We'll be right back with more great information about this story.
Guitar Wishes, where dreams with strings come true. The area's largest guitar shop and NAMM Top 100 winner, Guitar Wishes of Lincoln. We carry your favorite Gibson, Fender, Martin, Taylor, and Epiphone instruments. We're an authorized Music Man, Sterling, Vintage, and Yamaha dealer.
In transformation, when 2% of a population begin to think in more liberated and spiritually open ways, a new level of consciousness will awaken, bringing about a new reality for the total population. Join me, Jael McClain, confidence coach, business owner, musician, health and fitness enthusiast, transformational instigator, and your host of the 2% podcast in creating a new reality of spiritual awareness, confidence, and authenticity.
And we're back. Ron, we were just talking about, again, the Devil's Tramping Ground and what people are experiencing today versus what people experienced many years ago.
Well, Lee, you got to finish the story we were talking about before the break. Go ahead and continue for us.
Well, what I was talking about was today, the age of the internet, the age of information being at your fingertips, the age of people who read things knowing that certain people, when they go to a place like this, expect certain things, so they're going to leave certain things. I feel like that people are going to experience a less genuine experience now versus back before the internet.
Absolutely. Part of that is in the lore of the actual story, because if you look at the ancient or older literature, of course it's ancient to us, but go back 100, 150, 200 years ago, the expectations of the devil has changed.
Sure,
it's changed dramatically with movies of the Exorcist and various things of that.
Yes.
And so we have a much more modern view of the devil, and the portrayals are much more realistic and visual and fresh. This is really a pretty simple devil attraction when you've got a barren dirt and the story of what transpires there.
Right.
And we watched a couple of movies that people had made on
those
that,
movies are
and
very entertaining.
They were a little bit different, a little bit better than using my phone.
But those guys, I have to give it to them. They gave it a shot.
They gave it a good shot.
Yeah, I ate a lot of popcorn watching those movies. They're very entertaining. And but what I was talking about mainly the devil, and our interpretation of what the visualization of what the devil could look like or what's going on there. Again, with the internet age, you kind of know what to expect when you get there. Now the people 30, 40, 50 years ago, they didn't know what to expect when they got there. They may have seen a photograph,
right?
A piece of paper, a photograph. Pictures used to be paper, people, and they may have seen that and that only.
And a lot of it been in their imagination.
Exactly. And so they get there and their senses are heightened to an extent to where every little thing, like it was for me that night, every little thing is magnified 100%. Now, we talk about the name of this place is the Devils Tramping Ground, and the lore behind the devil getting up and trampling around that circle. That is a great story, but what else is happening? They have... they have stories of red eyes that stare at you in the middle of the night as you're driving down the road. You see red eyes glowing. And there's also stories of the soft voices that'll lure you to sleep.
Well, there's a lot of people trying to catch some of that.
Absolutely.
Now, Sabrina R on the internet, it's under Sabrina R on Tumblr, that had a interesting story. They had formed a paranormal group and had gone there. And she talked about how they got frightened, how they actually had an image. They were there. They were just staring. Two of them were filming. They were making pictures, and between a couple trees, they saw an image form, and then a little bit more of it formed, and then there was the image of the devil.
Right.
And it really spooked them. And one of the interesting things that she mentioned the first time I saw it was the smell of sulfur. Sure. They actually smelled sulfur. Now, if you've been out to the west, we talked about this. We had been to Old Faithful, where you go out there and have all those springs. It's such a stinking smell in a lot of those areas because of the sulfur that's in the water.
Right. Now,
she talked about when they decided to get out of there and left, they all got physically sick, and one of them actually threw up.
Right.
And they had to actually get away from there a good little bit before they sort of settled down and became, back to normal somewhat.
Right.
Now, I didn't find that a whole lot in some of the literature I did. Did you?
Well, again, trying to find specific instances attributed to specific people is rare when you're looking at this kind of thing. But again, I think that a lot of it could be things that have been put into your head before you go out there. An example would be someone listens to this podcast. They hear what you just talked about, sulfur. They go out there next week to spend the night. They smell an odd smell, and they're going to think, is that sulfur?
Is that sulfur?
They're going to look at maybe out into the woods and see something. Are those red eyes? Lee on that podcast was talking about red eyes. Is that red eyes? They talked about shapes forming in the tree. So they've got this stuff embedded. And so I think, I'm guessing probably 75% of this stuff is psychosomatic. But what if a little bit of it is actually happening?
Now, when you went down the path, was the path itself barren?
No.
Or in summertime, supposedly there's grass and things you got to walk through.
Right. That particular part is not, but it's only maybe 20 or 30 feet off of the road itself. It's not a long path there.
I think in a lot of ways the Devil's Tramping Ground is part of American culture's, I guess, fascination with supernatural.
Yes.
The supernatural legend that the devil is there, and if you go there, you're playing up against the devil. I know I was impressed with some of the people that said they went, And there's all kinds. There's some people allege, we talked about this little. You bring the aliens in, even in Bigfoot. There's people that think this has to do with UFOs.
Yes,
that a UFO could have sat there, could have poisoned the ground.
Right.
And
radiation.
we're going to be talking about UFOs later on. Now we
Yes.
had experience interesting. Similar to that, but we'll talk about that at a later time. But it's interesting how that has just disrupted people's lives. So can you imagine owning that farm and all of a sudden you have this happen? You got all these people coming out there to see that. You don't want to be accused of, particularly here in the Bible Belt, to be promoting the devil, and
Right.
actually that's what's the magical part of that, a supernatural part. That's what's drawing all the people.
Right, and sure, there's a lot of supernatural excuses or reasons why this is going on, but there's a few that are not supernatural. They say one of them is that the Native Americans used that specific spot as a meeting place. And had dances, and the dancing around has caused that. Now, I dance in my backyard a lot. I don't know if everybody out there knows that, but I don't have any dead spots in my yard.
Right. You're not dancing a lot in the same spot.
But you know what's going to happen? I'm going to work now. People are going to start asking me to dance. But anyway,
well, that's good.
There's that. There's also there's a Croatian tribal chief that is said to be buried there. Again, you don't have any specifics for these stories, but they are out there in literature and on the internet. So, if anybody's wanting to do the research, and again, one thing we're wanting to do is bring you all the information that we can find, and you make up your own mind and take the information and just develop your own belief about this. So, if you want to go out there, just be careful. There are trail cams out there, as I said, and they do ask that you go on and register. I think that like I said, there's been no answers every time I've tried to do it. So, but I would still attempt it if I was somebody going out.
Now, have you heard the one too, where it's related to the Indians?
Sure.
There's one theory that the tribe is actually related to the Croatan tribe that befriended the lost colonist.
Sure.
And it's got to do with the chief, and that was one of their areas supposedly there, and they had a big battle. This is just one of the myths about this site.
Right.
They had a big battle there, and so many people were killed that the blood actually poisoned the site there, and it just does not grow anything.
Right, and that's a great story, but I look at some place like Gettysburg. Talk about blood lost in a battle.
Yeah.
And
there's stuff growing everywhere.
There's stuff growing everywhere.
We were just out at Little Bighorn.
Yeah.
And that is a awesome battle scene. And you can go see where Custer made his last stand and just immense lots of death there.
Right.
And it's all growed over everywhere. So the blood from all those men that passed certainly didn't keep the prairie grass from growing.
Right. If you had to, Ron, if you had to take everything that we've talked about, everything that you've read, all the stories you've heard, and give me a determination, what do you think's happening there?
Well, obviously it's got some supernatural tendencies to it because of nothing growing there. The legend, usually when you get into something like this, there's something somewhere that happened that caused that to come to the forefront. Now, if you go back 400 years ago, 300 years ago, people were very superstitious. People believed in God. People believed in the devil. And I'm not saying that's superstitious, but I'm just saying a lot of things, everything that goes with that.
Right.
There were so many different versions of some of that. And I think that something had to happen there, sort of like the Bigfoot. We agree. We think Bigfoot's real.
Sure.
We think that there's just been too many occurrences, all these thousands of sightings all the time. If only 1% or 0.5% or even 1% of 1% is true, there's something to that.
Sure.
And I think there had to be something there that started that, and certainly there had to be something for it to continue.
Right.
I think if everybody went there and had just a pleasant out in the wood experience,
Right.
I really think that you wouldn't hear very much about it. Now, there again, we talked about some of the reasons. It could be psychological.
Sure.
When we go in there and have a preset notion,
Sure.
and we have a preset determination about what's going to happen, and we're looking for that sulfur smell, we're looking for that image in the tree, well, anything's possible. Our mind is a very powerful tool.
I agree.
And it can create heaven or hell on earth.
That's where I tend to go with it. I think that there is something there geologically, something there in the ground that has caused this to happen. And I think all these stories have been built on top of it. So whether you want to, and maybe there was a Croatian tribal chief buried there. Maybe there was a Native American tribe that used that spot for meetings. Maybe there was some seriously bad things that happened. Maybe some people did die there. Maybe there was blood spilled on the land. Maybe there was a UFO. But I feel
Don't forget the Vortex.
Oh, well, the Vortex. Don't get me started on
Did
the
you
Vortex.
read about the Vortex?
I did read about the Vortex. That's
Okay. That's a whole different thing.
That's a whole different thing. I had a watch called a Vortex one time. But never worked. But so, all these things could have happened there at the site. But I believe that it starts geologically. Now, if someone is sleeping there, if someone is laying down and trying to get a night's sleep, who knows? Maybe there's something in the ground that could make you smell sulfur. Maybe there's something that could make you dream, maybe make your brain go into overdrive and think you are seeing or hearing something that you're not. Maybe it was happening to me the night I was slept out there. I don't know. But all I can tell you is that your brain is on like steroids out there.
Gotcha. Well, when you spent the night there, I guess actually a couple of
15
final
minutes.
questions. You're 15 minutes. Now, I thought it was 45.
Well, it depends on
but
who you
15
ask.
minutes, that's not a lot of time.
Right.
Did you just feel it's time to go? Did you come with the intent of spending all night?
Yeah, absolutely.
Apparently, like a lot of people go with the intent of spending all night.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to go spend all night.
So who wants to drive home 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning? You didn't get there to what, 10 o'clock?
Oh, no, I left out around 10.
Around 10.
Yeah. And so, but the thing was, you have an uneasy feeling from the first moment you step there. Again, there's no sounds as far as nature. You would expect some sort of, I don't know, crickets or cicada, whatever's going on.
We live out on the remains of an old farm. We go out in the woods or anywhere. It is so loud.
Right.
You almost need earplugs.
And there's
That's how much
nothing
danger.
there. And you notice it. That's the thing. You notice it when you get out there. You're like, where's all the wildlife? And so with the absence of that sound, when you do hear something like this snapping of a twig,
It's exaggerated.
you're like, what is coming to get me? And I hit the table again. Those of you who are listening at home, if you hit the table here, then it causes some problems with the system. So we're going to try not to do that.
Try not to bound
Try
on
not
the
to
table.
do that. So, but anyway, so that was my experience there. I would love to go back and try it again. Maybe take a more powerful flashlight.
Well, I wish we had enough time when we talked about this. I said, well, I had a couple of days. Maybe we could go down there and check this place out. But then someone had said, and one of the things did they have a gate when you were there?
They may have put something up, in recent months, but the last I saw,
There's no gates.
there was no gate.
Well, sounds great. Well, I'm Ron Ramsey, and this is Lee Burnette, and you have been listening to Conspiracy Theories of the Carolinas. We had a lot of fun today as we talked about the Devils Tramping Ground down in Chatham County, North Carolina, and it's just outside of Siler City. The directions, if you decide to go, are easy to find. It'll give you detailed directions, and it's on State Road 1100 in Chatham County, and it says the Devils Tramping Ground Road.
Yeah.
So it's
Get a picture with the
easy
sign.
to find.
Yeah, get a picture with the sign. That's probably all you're going to get. I got one with that night. So
You did.
I took a selfie with my iPhone 3
And
or whatever
we
it
hope
was.
that you've enjoyed that. And did you want to say anything about next week's?
Next week, we are going to look at a phenomenon that a lot of people have attributed to the Devil's Tramping Ground. We're going to look at North Carolina and the alien connection.
Alien connection. We're talking about UFOs?
Have UFOs visited? Have there been abductions in North Carolina? We're going to look at all of this and hopefully have some stories for some people who live around here that will shock everybody. So
well, that would be wonderful. I understand that North Carolina is about number 10 in the country in UFO sightings.
right.
So I even have a little story I can tell you about that.
Oh,
Too.
see.
So we're looking forward to that.
I can't wait. All right, so that's going to do it for our episode today. Thanks to everyone here at Sound Factory Studios and Center Stage Entertainment, all part of the Guitar Wishes complex down here in beautiful downtown Lincoln, North Carolina. We couldn't do this without them, and we're excited for next week. And I'm looking at the camera right there. That's where I need to look. So everybody take care. We will see you next week. For Ron, I'm Lee, and we're out.
Wishes.